Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Marty, thank you for the invitation to join this elite conference and participate in this important panel. My name is Mark Thimmig. I'm chairman and CEO of Esportz Entertainment Corp. We are a global news provider in esports and gaming. We are Reuters' worldwide partner for esports news. We're part of the White House Press Corps as well. And we provide news to a number of other platforms in the industry. And we're also involved in creating entertainment, esports entertainment and gaming entertainment, and a number of other areas, including some work in the education space as well, Marty. So we're excited to talk about it. There's a tremendous amount, as Marty said, going on in the gaming industry and esports industries. So no shortage of things to share with the audience as we get going. So thank you for the opportunity.
Fantastic. Could we have the next person? Mark? Oh, that was Mark. William?
Hi, my name's William Corbin. I'm the chairman and CEO of Quiet Please. We are a podcast network. We have about 50 podcasts to date. And in addition to that, I'm on the board of advisors of Maslow, an AI company, as well as still consult in the esports part of the gaming industry.
Fantastic. And Shawn?
Yeah, thanks, Marty and team for having us here. My name is Shawn Gunn. I'm the co-founder and CEO of PLLAY. PLLAY is a platform driven by artificial intelligence and machine learning. And we create wager moments automated for gamers across both esports and what we call a much larger opportunity in the competitive amateur market. So to your point, Marty, 150 billion for gaming. We're approaching taking over TV and OTT as an industry. Esports is a big segment, but we think the competitive amateur is even bigger with kind of 2+ billion gamers kind of approaching that market. My background has been, I've run gaming businesses at companies like Nokia, have had a couple exits as a CEO. My co-founder comes from FanDuel. So we understand kind of both the daily fantasy, self-regulated and regulated industry. And we think this entire market is moving towards that. So we have some really good partnerships we put in place with folks like the NBA, Players Association, Travis Scott, Michael B. Jordan, others. So we think there's a mashing of our service across both traditional entertainment and regulated markets in the very near future. Thanks for having me.
I want to explore regulation and what you all mean by that, because I think that's very interesting to find out about it. So I wanted to start off, let's start off at the top of this and talk about, what do you think is the state of alternative media, including gaming, esports, things like that. I think that we've talked about esports in the past. And so I was talking to a guy who was doing he was like a conference producer, right? Comic-Con, blah, 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 blah. And he was doing like a Comic-Con a week, and he talking about all the economics, and he's like saying, well, in Comic-Con, these actors can make $100,000 for a day or 2 days to go and do signatures and be on a podium and speak, et cetera. But in gaming or e-gaming these days, there are literally like a basketball, like a Madison Square Garden full of fans showing up to a competition on a daily basis somewhere, in the world every day. So can you guys talk about like the health of the industry, how COVID has impacted it? Does COVID continue to impact? I mean, at least in the United States, some states have different regulations in terms of whether you can be outdoors or indoors or wearing a mask, et cetera, or going back to school. So can you guys address that? And why don't we start off with William?
You got it. It's interesting because if you've never been to an esports competition, go. It's an amazing experience. And as we're coming out of COVID, I'm sure the entertainment spaces that host these will become full again. But one of the things about it that's so neat is it's I'm gonna say different than sports, but it's just so geared towards a family entertainment experience. And there's something really neat about live. And even if you don't understand the sport, your eyes will adjust. You will be able to follow what's going on. But I go to in Los Angeles, there's Blizzard Arena, and they have the Overwatch League, and I go there pretty often, and I'm just always amazed at how family friendly. There's no alcohol, which totally changes the experience. But even people who have never been there before, within about 5 minutes, are truly on the edge of their seat and cheering. That's the other thing that's really interesting is there's the fan rivalry, or the rivalry between the teams is there, but the entire place erupts on a great shot or a great kill, or when something great happens. It's not like only cheering for your team, it's cheering for something great going on. So
how large is the stadium? What's the capacity?
That one is about 8,000.
Okay.
And you're literally, every seat's a great seat. You're literally in the middle of the action, because they're also technologically so much more sophisticated than any other arena. The screens, the DJs, the audio, and they have people out there, giving tons of swag, which is always fun. But then, in China, there are 80,000 people arenas, and they're packed.
And if you had to categorize the age segmentation, what is it, roughly speaking?
I would say definitely a millennial audience with parents. There's younger kids with parents, but the parents are there, I think, because they're accompanying their children more than actually being in the audience. So
yeah. Great. So and so outside of the esports and everything else, what is your how is gaming doing in terms of the industry in general, and
I mean, obviously, I would say the betting aspect is driving a tremendous amount of adoption with the older segment. It is totally changing the landscape of how everything is working. I think in this country, especially with these sports books coming online, there's more and more people who are getting into not necessarily esports direct, but that periphery of esports. And I always say the gamification of the world is happening. Gaming is impacting how you're being taught through education. It's impacting almost every aspect of people's lives, whether you know it or not, because at the end of the day, this device is a game.
Right, and I think gamification is going to lead most of the revenue models, going in the future, right? Because I was talking to somebody, I guess there's a online matchmaking service. I don't know anything about this stuff, but they were telling me that they had hired as a director of marketing somebody out of gaming, and they kind of changed their whole approach to get people more engaged, because they look at the numbers for how long people stay online in retention. So
yeah, I'm very, I think I said this in one of the other conferences, but I won't even, in any application for any job that I'm looking at, it's almost a requirement that you've had some game theory.
Fascinating. Interesting. Shawn, your thoughts on the health of the industry, and where do you think it's at right now?
Yeah, no, I think gaming was trending on the upswing. Obviously, COVID for businesses like ours within gaming exploded. So we've seen kind of 11 to 20,000% increase over the last 8 months from both users, engagement, some anecdotal notes, because we're now being pulled into some conversations with actual publishers and platforms. We see anywhere from 4 to 5x engagement or normal play of a particular title. So take a game like Call of Duty, which is super popular. Users may play that game anywhere from, on average, 3 to 5 times a week. We see a 5x when you add wagering into those moments. And especially, for us, we've taken the approach to create a kind of fair and transparent environment. So we do some things that make it really easy for users to engage, and we do all the heavy lifting from the AI perspective on who won and lost and all that good stuff. So I think that trend will continue. But I do think what's happening now overall in gaming is, from the bigger players, they're realizing that they've amassed these really big populations, right? 100,000 plus audiences, 100 million, I should say, plus audiences a month with the bigger titles. And now they're looking for other ways to monetize and engage those audiences. So they don't have a retention problem. They have kind of a longer term engagement and monetization. And to the point made earlier, I think now you have things like wagering, betting, other services, NFTs, right, that are engaging these audiences and offering other revenue models that can kind of sustain the monetization and engagement. So I think that's where gaming's going, is kind of introducing these types of ideas and services. But I do think, other things are going to make that even better, right? We're now seeing the proliferation with cloud gaming. So, starting to remove the umbilical cord from having hardware necessary to participate and being locked in your home. To William's point, you have always had the mobile device, but now the ability to not have to download the game. You can stream it from your laptop or from your streaming Roku TV. And so a service like ours, think of us as a monetization layer. We've created that with our initial partnership with Twitch, and that's positioned us very well for things like Xbox, xCloud, PlayStation is doing similar things. Obviously, Google is having a little trouble with Stadia, but they'll work that out, I'm sure. And so I think those are the forward-looking things that will amass even more audiences. So gaming is trending in the right direction, and there'll be disruption.
And Shawn, I just want to bring up something because of the sector that you're in. But it's always fascinating whenever I watch these, documentaries on sports figures and entertainers, how much gaming they do. Yes. It's like, you work hard, you do your performance, and then you've got, a whole free day ahead of you, and maybe you spend 5 hours gaming. So can you talk a little about that? I mean, it seems like, so, a lot of guys, this guy just won the US Open in tennis, right? Mm-hmm. And most of the time people fall on their back and they wait, they can't believe how they won. But he did the strangest thing where he fell on his side and closed his eyes and put his head down. And he said it was a dead fish thing. I had no idea what that was. Maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah. I'm not going to say I know everything everyone's doing. There's so much going on in gaming. I think from an investor standpoint, which I wear that hat as well, you can't think of gaming as myopic, right? It's diverse in game type and communities within these gamings, and that's what drives a lot of the loyalty. And so when I talk to a lot of investors, they think of gaming as just like this one little community, and it's more diverse than probably the people walking the planet, right, and the passion for it. But to your earlier question around the connective tissue between entertainers and professional athletes, that's something we tapped into early. I would say my co-founder, what she did at FanDuel was a lot of their early influencer deals, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So, the Floyd Mayweather having FanDuel on the shorts in the boxing ring, those were innovative deals. And of course, influencer relationships have progressed handily, but still people don't realize that NBA players, NFL players, celebrities play a lot of games. And many of them are starting to figure out how to position that DNA within their social influence. So one example for us that's helped us achieve some of our user acquisition numbers, Travis Scott, who arguably right now is one of the biggest entertainers on the planet. Many of you probably heard about his Fortnite concert where there was more than a few people tuning in at that point. And Travis is also very known for being a Call of Duty and NBA 2K player. And so athletes, celebrities, influencers are starting to figure out, even though I'm an all-star on the court, if I start to open up that side of my life, there's a whole nother monetization path and engagement path for me with my fans. Another is Bradley Beal, who almost won the scoring title last year, NBA All-Star, Olympian. He's on our cap table, and he saw very early on from a pure investment standpoint that he said, hey, look, I watch guys bet tens of thousands of dollars on the road playing 2K. And what you're doing is kind of creating an environment where it's safe, legal, and efficient. Because even in those situations, we have guys that welch, right? They welch on the bet. And so we solve that from two folks playing $10 or all the way up to thousands of dollars. And so that's the part of the world we're trying from a play standpoint to capture, is this cultural influence between entertainment, new media, gaming, and then monetizing that influence.
Yeah, and just to add on to that a little bit, Marty, the brands and the big companies are clearly adopting a similar strategy. And I think it's such a great point because for those of you guys who don't know, Fox actually owns a Twitch competitor called Caffeine. And they were having they were looking at all the influencers, and the prevailing thought was go after Ninja and the player influencers. And they did exactly what Shawn just said. They went to Drake and did a deal with him. And they were able to, because it's hard to compete against Twitch, but Caffeine was able to actually grab a little share or almost bring new users by doing a partnership with Drake, and they're doing other partnerships with other famous athletes and famous entertainers, as opposed to the ninjas of the world and the famous Fortnite players, because they really see it as an opportunity to get new share, get new users, and it is they have so much influence over their audiences, almost more influence than these gamers have over their audiences, and they are so integrated in the gaming world today, and they have such powerful presence, and it's a great strategy, I would say, for the newcomers getting into the world.
Yeah, hey, I want to pick up on that just a bit too, William. We did a show called The Gamer Hour. The Gamer Hour was a late night model TV show. We shot it at Reuters and Times Square. We had some of the biggest names in athletics and entertainment on that show. We did 25 episodes. I mean, we had guys like Kendrick Bourne from the 49ers. We had Alex Wood, who was the pitcher from the Dodgers who won the World Series. We had Evan Ingram, Josh Hart, and we had some musicians like Herman Lee, who was famous for writing one of the most popular songs in Guitar Hero. Also, Clinton Sparks, who's out of the music industry, and Alan Bobby Fino Foster, who is both a former NFL and is a music producer as well. So we ended up, as I say, we did 25 episodes of the show. We found a tremendous audience both on the athlete side. We literally had, and I'm not overstating this, over 1,000 athletes who had gotten in touch with us through their managers, their marketing people, and so on, had gotten in touch with us about getting their people on the show. So we literally had the pick of pretty much anybody out there, and we learned a lot from it. Of course, these guys all, as mentioned, guys and gals, by the way, some big gals out there we had from WWE, huge fan bases. But we chose to take this approach rather than interviewing gamers, because these professional athletes, first of all, are much more experienced in speaking to the media. So they have a personality. Now, some of them are more reticent, a little more reserved. Others are more outgoing, and you find that in the dialogue. And we also did gameplay with them, but they're more accustomed and more comfortable in that setting. In addition, they're not only superstars in gaming because they're of their name, but they're superstars on the field, on the mound, on the court. They have their own foundations in many cases, so they're prominent in that regard. They have huge social media followings as well, which is, or we chose ones with significant social media followings. So they also appealed, from our perspective, to the more 30, late 20s, even mid 30s or 40s person wanting to watch. And from a sponsor standpoint, sponsors understood these people much better, and having their product sitting next to a Zach Collins or an Austin Eckler or somebody like that, that is also, as I say, has a bigger range of publicity, was more value add for them. So I just wanted to mention that as we got through this conversation, and how we actually applied what we're talking about and how successful it really was. But the show got millions of views.
So before we kind of drill down into what everybody does here in the gaming space, can you just talk about where you see the best opportunities in gaming today outside of what you do? Because I know, like gaming, when I look at it, and I've got a background in computer science, so I look at it as being like lots of layers of technology, one on top of the other. Obviously you've got these servers. I don't know if they're all on Amazon, server farms, and then you've got technology where people actually have the software and they play the gaming. It goes through monetization. People like Shawn, Gunn come in the middle of it, and they say, "Great, there's another layer of monetization that we can just throw ourselves into." Boom, right? And so maybe you guys can talk about. It seems like Shawn is doing next level stuff. Maybe you guys can talk about, where you see the best opportunities outside of what you do, because I know all you do great things. So,
I'll just jump real quick and then let the other guys jump in. Is that first of all, I think Shawn and William both touched on the betting issue. Betting is probably right now one of the biggest monetization opportunities in this whole gaming and esports. It falls in really the money falls into a few buckets, what I call the big money. Obviously, sponsorships are big money. Gaming, gambling, and betting is a huge area of economics. Those are the biggest areas we see today. Obviously, a publisher is also a Blizzard and other publishers like that. Of course, that is a whole revenue stream that is extraordinary. Beyond that are many, many smaller streams for either parts, pieces, local game centers, etc. But the big money is, I think, and given that gaming is such a global thing, we're not bound. If you have a McDonald's, what's your market radius? Is it a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles? Gaming, it's worldwide. So that makes a big difference, and there are less limitations on it. So anyway, I'll jump off.
And let me just, before the others jump in, let me just jump in because before I got into what I do now, before I worked in banking, I ran a consultancy, and we did a lot of work in the casino industry, and it's really fascinating the way they handle data. And so if the thought was you could always move the casino, the data part of it, to the cloud or to whatever, and you could probably do the exact same thing with a lot less overhead. But I just need some people to flesh out what they mean by the gambling aspect of it, because so are we talking about just gambling on sports, gambling on esports, in fantasy sports, or gambling on esports, sports, and gaming, like League of Legends stuff?
Yeah, gambling / betting. It can take so many different forms. It can be individual matches. It can be players. It can be any number of things. And there are going to be companies, and our companies, that are sort of segmenting into what do they want to do. Esports is a segment of gaming. It is a segment of it. The gaming is much bigger than esports is, and that's really where this across the board kind of betting activity is going. It's going into much bigger than just an esports game. So
great, Mark. Great, thank you so much, William. Shawn, jump in.
I'll try to keep this short, but when I look at the space of gaming, you have the big brands are going there because they want to get their message in front of the very valuable eyeballs that are in gaming. And when you look at share of time that eyeballs spent, if Facebook has an average of 52 minutes a day, gaming has an average of 4 hours. So people are spending a lot of time with it. The sports.
Yeah, look at the demographic, right? Because Facebook is like old people now, right?
Yeah. And the sports book, the media companies, the gambling companies, they are all flocking to this space because it's filling their funnel of new eyeballs and new bettors. So they're clamoring to this space. It's interesting because Fox is moving into the space big time, but they can't take a bigger than a 4% ownership in anything, or all the regulators that come with gambling will jump all, the Murdochs don't want the proctologist. So, and so a lot of the media companies, the casinos are coming to them because they have eyeballs and they want they want people in their casino. The brands are going to gaming because they want those young eyeballs buying their products. The celebrities and athletes are going to gaming because I'll give you one quick stat and then I'll end it. I do a lot of live streaming. I used to be at an agency called Wasserman, and we managed a ton of athletes. All the athletes wanted to get into gaming or be associated with gaming after we told them this stat. So we did a live stream with Beyonce, a Beyonce concert. Beyonce's big. The most concurrent streams that she got at any given moment were 86,000 concurrent. I also did the live stream for League of Legends Championship about 4 years ago. We had 16 million concurrent streams going. So the power and the passion of the gaming audience and how quickly they will tune into something is like nothing anybody's ever seen.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? That number? So Beyonce, 86,000.
Concurrent.
16 million.
Concurrent. League of Legends over the time was over 100 million people viewed it. Beyonce, I don't think we ever got even to 1 million views. So,
and Beyonce has what, 50 million Twitter followers or social media followers?
Over 100, has over hundreds of millions.
100 million. Wow.
Yeah. Even if you have 100 million in gaming, that's nothing.
Yeah.
I just one quick question, William. I think that you told me you spoke 7 or 8 years ago in LA with us, and you gave a number saying something like there was 10 or 20 billion-dollar games that came out that year, all of them making the money in the first week. And how's that number these days? Is it still around there, or a little bit more, or like?
I would say it's probably even higher.
Okay.
Every number and stat I said 7 years ago, 100x it. I mean,
wow, it sounds like Bitcoin.
It's bigger. It's bigger than Bitcoin. I would say it's bigger than Bitcoin.
Come on, let's be real, Shawn.
Yeah, I'll throw a few things out there. So when you ask other areas or layers within gaming, clearly we talked about betting and that monetization. What goes along with that is the data associated with it. So kind of in our model, we've created our business to be a data business that creates monetization through wagering. And we're collecting behavioral data. And of course, there's other folks doing that. I think we all believe that over time, the licensing and byproduct of that data can be anonymized and used in a lot of different ways, to the brands, to the gaming publishers, to other entities. So I think data is going to be huge and a huge monetization layer. I think the other piece is for our audience, because we're skill-based wagering today, is kind of that 18 plus market. But we think the kind of rewards and opportunities with brands for promotions for the younger audience, and even as associate revenue model with our core audience, is going to be huge, right? And there's plenty of players playing in that space as well. And then lastly, I would say kind of the next model investors should be really putting some chips down on is the metaverse and how gaming is incorporated within that world. And so we're talking to a few of the big players there about creating kind of our model for avatar sports and betting. And so the metaverse is
I'm actually logged into the panel.
Looking at that in a big way.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Shawn just said about the metaverse. So Roblox.
Can somebody define what the metaverse is? Because I'm pretty good at just living in one universe. What's a metaverse?
Yeah. So it's if anyone hasn't heard about it, you should go read a book called Snow Crash.
Yeah.
Snow Crash?
Just download that book, Snow Crash. And there's been a few iterations over the last 20 years, but I think we've now moved into a place where technology makes it easier to tap in from a mobile phone, or they used to be very heavy in their software. But in essence, it's a parallel universe, right? Where you create an avatar. Some use cases like Facebook are doing it with VR, where you still need some more equipment. I think that'll get better over time. But many like Vcoin has an offering, and there's tons you can do a quick Google search where you can tap in right from a web browser. And in essence, many are crypto driven, right? So they have their own economy. And what you find, and this taps into what the Elon Musk of the world have been saying, is that over the next 100 years, users of the human race are going to have a lot of leisure time and want to escape, right? They're going to want to escape realities of life. You can be a rich, handsome guy, right, in the metaverse, and have your way with life, right? Ready Player One is the most, yes, thank you, is the most succinct example. And so what you find in this world today is there's casinos that are operating. There are transactions around clothing, cars, houses, real estate is one of the biggest ones, right? And so if you're an investor looking for pretty big multiples and sustainable growth, we're still in kind of the first inning. And so I would be definitely looking there, and everything we've talked about in gaming is translating into those environments. And it's doing it at hyper speed. So it took 10, 15, 20 years. Now it's taking kind of 2 to 5 years, maybe shorter.
And I would say the audience younger than millennial age is living in the metaverse today. If you haven't heard of Roblox, go check it out. But I have a daughter who's 12, and Roblox is the place that she goes to communicate with her friends, to share, talk, spend, build, buy. And it's not just a 30-minute thing, it's multiple hours. And the comment I made that gaming is bigger than Bitcoin, just to give you an example of how gamification is totally changing everything. It is changing investing. Robinhood is the gamification of investing. That's all it is. It doesn't allow anybody to invest. It just makes it fun and it makes it a game. And you can tell what Robinhood has done. So if you're looking to put money in it, definitely be thinking of the metaverse, and then be thinking of how standard activities that you do on a daily basis are being gamified, and the company's doing that. Like a Robinhood, taking a simple act of investing, turning it into a game, and making $1 billion.
Well, obviously, the whole GameStop thing was a massive retail gamification of investing, right?
Yeah, Dogecoin investing is a game.
But also, Marty, when you think about that, there is a connective tissue that we've studied from that Robinhood investor, crypto owner, metaverse player, wager on new models within gaming. There is a connective DNA of that person, and it's a he or she. Sometimes they're a gamer, sometimes they're not, but they understand gamification. It simplifies and it becomes immersive to them, and they're talking about it amongst their friends and people they meet, either on a chat within a metaverse, or just on the Xbox Live chat, right? People are using these as not just to play the games, but to be the town square, right? What I think Facebook used to be, right, for a lot of the shenanigans.
So can I just get just a short commentary from you? Like, how passe is Facebook? Because they used to have like gaming, right? I forget the name of was it Angry Birds? One of these things have big Silicon Valley company. It's what, like, so from a percent of gaming share, where is Facebook in the world versus where they used to be? Any thoughts?
Yeah, don't quote me on the exact percent, but they're still kind of a far third or fourth, maybe fifth, when you talk about kind of the top platforms, and obviously these new metaverse platforms are coming into play and becoming bigger, but there's still influence. And I think the influence of Facebook is still on new user acquisition, right? There's not a platform alive that doesn't have a buy that's part of Facebook and Instagram to kind of drive engagement. But I think for these younger audiences that are approaching, I have a 17-year-old that games, that he thinks of Facebook as where his grandparents and parents are. So his time spent on Facebook is like 0.000%, right? Just as we all were 17 or 13 one time, right? So they've all escaped to other platforms. And so if you're looking for what's the next things, it's not Facebook. And I think the challenge is a lot of the missteps we've all read about Facebook haven't helped that even with the older audiences. So I think Instagram is still an opportunity for them, but they're under a lot of pressure, obviously with TikTok and Triller and some of these other environments, and that makes them a little bit challenging to enter these new markets in a big way.
I just getting back to that 86,000 Beyonce versus 16 million League of Legends. It really tells you something about the world. So, so can we just drill down a little bit more and talk about what you guys are doing specifically in the space? And I'd love to hear more, from William, who's the head of revenue for a branding firm. So maybe you guys talk about revenue, financial, revenue models, things like that, and also how you acquire, your customers, your sponsors, et cetera.
Yeah, it's interesting that talking about Facebook is one of the things that so a company like Zynga, they were a game maker, and we know them today because of Facebook. They were quick to get integrated in that platform, and Farmville took off. And what I'm looking for, and the companies I'm most interested in, are the Zyngas in the metaverse. These companies that are getting into Roblox and trying to do similar to what Zynga did in Facebook. So it's these companies that are forward thinking enough and not necessarily creating the platforms for engagement, but are recognizing that these platforms are engaged, there's kids there, and they're trying to figure out how they can work within those existing platforms.
I mean, content, obviously, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, content's king. And you guys will say cash flow is king, but I'm a content guy. So
Keep on going. Yep.
yeah, content for me, content equals cash flow, and content is where people engage. I have all these podcasts, and good God, it's amazing how engaging a podcast is for a brand. If you put a brand message on a podcast, they're going to act on it more so than the environment.
Great. I had a question from the audience talking about the regulatory aspects of betting on the gaming world, and there seems to be a clampdown on it, just like there's a clampdown on crypto these days. So
yeah, I can jump in there. So there's really kind of two paths, and I'll talk about how we're approaching those. In the U.S. and in many countries, there is a bifurcation between kind of regulated betting and skill-based wagering, right? And if you think about that world, two great examples are DraftKings and FanDuel, right? They started as skill-based wagering for daily fantasy. In the US, that's today legal in all but about 12 states, but those 12 are falling fast, right? Under the tax pressure of our country. I think Florida will fall next. And in essence, will allow players that can control their own destiny in a game of skill to wager on those outcomes, either through cash, virtual currency, rewards, prizes. And so that's where we've started, and many others have started there. So you do not have to have a classic gambling license to do that, as long as you meet a bunch of different criteria. And then what you see in traditional sports betting, esports fan betting, things of that nature, that's when you've crossed the river and you're now into regulated betting, right? Just like you would do with NFL betting on a sports match. And there you do need or are required to have a gambling license. And I think today state of play is about 4 or 5 states, maybe a few more, that's allowed. And you need to have all those criteria in place. And when you look globally, that footprint, there's a subset of countries that's illegal in as well. So there is a landscape, but most of the world is open to that. Our approach in that market has been, obviously our phase 1 has been around skill-based wagering. We made an announcement today that we brought on board to our advisory board, Mark Liparelli. Mark was the past chairman of the Nevada Gaming Commission and now operates the Westgate Superbook, which is the #1, #2 sports book in the country. And so our path down that model is to become, along with some of these partners, the first kind of regulated and self-regulated market to accomplish kind of both things, allowing a fan to sit at home from their Twitch or Roku TV and bet on 2 or more folks playing their favorite Call of Duty match, or jump into play and be a part of the peer-to-peer wagering model and win cash. And so, by the way, most of the models you see in the US do participate with players that are offshore, which is kind of one of the inhibiting factors when you talk about breaking into one of these big markets or big environments like a League of Legends league or Xbox environment. Of course, they want to participate with someone that's kind of US based and a big kind of name that they know will be there, day after day. So that's been an opportunity for us. And the last thing I'll throw out there, just as an anecdote for kind of where the market is, I totally agree. Content is king, and how we see that working for us is to attach monetization to that content. So what you find with a lot of gamer influencers and better influencers is they just want another way to monetize that audience. We make that easy for them to tap in and create that monetization. And today we find, just from a betting perspective, it's not just the entertainment value. We have people today telling us they make more betting and winning cash on play than they do at their Amazon warehouse job. So people are now starting to create revenue channels that are meaningful to their lives, right? Paying their rent and mortgage. So I think that'll be a small subset, but it's interesting that this is becoming, a much bigger economy.
And let me just cut in here for 1 second. Shawn, it's very smart you brought on this Nevada Gaming Commission guy. I will tell you an extremely short story. I had a client, it was a massive Indian casino back in the day. And so most people think, Indian casinos, government gave away land, blah, 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 blah. But what happened was that a bill was passed in Congress in like 1988, and a consulting firm plus a guy who had priorly been head of New Jersey Gaming Commission went around the country selling all these Indian tribes. They open casinos, you can do it now. And that's how that business, started. And that's why if you go to the border of Vegas and California, you see a whole bunch of Indian casinos there. You go to Connecticut, there's a bunch of Indian casinos. It's smart people with ideas, they go there and they kind of percolate them, and then and I think there's a Indian casino in Hard Rock Cafe in Florida, which is massive as well, and then they branched out to a whole bunch of other things. So very smart, that's the way to do it. So I'm sorry. So Mark, can you just talk about what you do, monetization,
sure.
and
I just wanted to also add that if people are interested in following betting in general, I'm talking about betting on gaming, betting on the horses, betting on anything. We work with a publication that is the biggest betting publication in the world. It's called Sigma, SIGMA.world, and they're out of Malta, which is obviously one of the gaming license capitals of the world. So if people are interested in following what's going on in betting, and they want to know what's going on in betting, gaming, and all those things, and they want to have a simple publication to kind of keep an eye on, Sigma.world is something I'd recommend. Beyond that, I agree with, of course, everything that's been talked about here. Content is king. One of the objectives as a content producer that we are, and we have some of the most popular podcasts in the industry. We're usually number 1 or 2 on Google for 2 of our podcasts. We have the Esports Minute, which is usually about 2 minutes of the biggest stories in esports and gaming going on every day, Monday through Friday. And then we have a deep dive where we get a chance to talk to some of the biggest people in the industry, whether they be game company owners or team play and so on. And those are 30, 45-minute podcasts. We've done somewhere in the area of about 800 podcasts so far. We distribute on 24 platforms and usually rank within the top 5, 10 of all those platforms. So podcasting is a big influencer opportunity, and it's a big sponsor opportunity for people who want to reach that audience in that regard. We are going to be launching a reality TV show. It's a gamer mansion, and it follows that typical kind of reality show format: love, hate, fun, play, argue, all those things, with some popular streamers and competitive gamers. We've got a big mansion in Virginia where they're living together and playing together, and so that's a fun thing, and we can do a lot of interactive things with Twitch and other things. But beyond that, we'll be also producing additional programming that's sponsor supported. That's the key. I think, Marty, you mentioned early on, we have to use a sort of a television model in the sense that we want to make the programming free to the viewer. We want the sponsors to cover the cost of reaching those viewers. That's the ideal thing. And then we can always take that data, and we can also reach out to them with products or services that they may be of interest as well. Now, in addition, we're one other thing we haven't talked about, and I'm just going to introduce it a second before I jump off, is there's a consolidation going on in the industry as well. And
I'm sorry, which industry?
In gaming, in esports, and gaming companies. So what you're starting to see, and we're involved in one, we're merging with 2 other esports companies, and we'll go out public in early to mid 2022. But what you're seeing is a combination of companies rolling up that are in the esports and gaming space with other companies, or the public companies, or those companies that have gone public both on the Canadian and the NASDAQ, are buying up gaming companies right and left. So there is this consolidation going on. It's very exciting. It's interesting. More companies are starting to come into the public market where that's really valuable and important to a gaming company. So that is something we're involved in, and we're excited about where it can go, and we'll raise some capital for that.
I have a couple of questions from the audience, but before I get to that, can you talk, Mark, about like what's the revenue of the podcasting industry right now? I mean, I know that bad guy Joe Rogan makes a lot of money, but what about everybody else? Because Joe Rogan's a bad guy. Quote me on that.
Yeah, there you go. Just very quickly, the sponsorship opportunities are in the 6 figures for good shows that have good standing and good distribution. It is difficult at times to prove the full extent of your distribution, because a lot of these podcast platforms don't do a fantastic job of giving you the kind of analytics that
Sure.
more mature advertisers want. So you have to get an advertiser that understands this and can look at your position and see that and understand you're reaching their market.
But the number I got was like, it's $1 billion industry. Is it bigger than that now, or?
Oh, I think, well, it's growing because of the way that people are changing in the way in which they consume information and data and programming. You know, more and more today, we have multitaskers. So I got a podcast playing in the background while I'm working on writing something or I'm doing something else. So given the fact that we're also very mobile and we can get those podcasts on our phones, in our cars, wherever, there's a bigger distribution opportunity and so a bigger reach, and therefore it's going to continue to grow. It is very segmented, which is interesting. So, you know, you got podcasts of every different kind of flavor that you and some at any given time are drawing huge audiences.
Yeah, I mean, there's fantastic podcasts. I'm a big fan of Andreessen Horowitz. It's really amazing podcast. Recently, somebody's released Peter Thiel's lectures at Stanford, which are phenomenal. So there's really some great podcasts and information out there.
Yeah. Hey, Marty, quickly on that $1 billion number.
Yep.
So we've eclipsed it, but that $1 billion is associated with ad revenue, like advertising in podcasts. The actual space is much bigger because when you think Spotify is getting $9 a month in subscription, and a lot of that is for the podcasting as well as the music, but now Apple's launched subscriptions. So the actual real revenue in and around podcasting is far in excess of $1 billion when you really look at the whole landscape.
Great. Gary, you had a question?
No, I'll incorporate it in my introduction.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. So keep on going, guys. We have about 2 more minutes left. Shawn, you know, you talked about your model. You know, any other thoughts on that in terms of, you know, revenue, future revenue? You know, again, you really didn't talk about how you're introducing yourself to the athletes or how they know about you, you know, et cetera. Because I know that a lot of athletes are controlled by agencies. You know, so maybe you can talk about it. And I know it's, as somebody who's actually spoken to several of them, know a lot of them. You know, it's not the easiest thing to get introductions to them, right? Because they're so protected.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things there. I'll talk about that and then kind of how our revenue model works in the future. On the athlete celebrity side, look, it's like anything else on Light. It's your network, right? And your ability to connect with the right gatekeepers, if you will. And so, as I mentioned, my co-founder had a lot of those relationships. And so we tapped in pretty quickly. I think that's number one. Two, it has to be an idea that aligns with their brand, right? All these athletes are little corporations, sometimes big corporations, right? And the ability to kind of align with that. And it doesn't work for everyone, but for most that get it and understand the complexity and the size of where gaming is going, we've been able to stake that case and either get them on our cap table or also have marketing relationships with them. The second piece of that is now we've gotten through that kind of hurdle, we're getting to the league level. And so whether it's player associations or the leagues themselves, now they're understanding that we have taken a very high approach in self-regulating, right? So we have tons of tech. We're doing identity checks, KYC, know your consumer tech is built into our platform. So we're removing minors, which is really the number one fear factor of every league, every community. And so I think we've proven that piece. And so that's helped our adoption, both with celebrities and influencers. On the play revenue model side, we did some things that are slightly different than what others in this space have done. So we want users today to win the entire jackpot. So Marty, when you and I both put $25 up to play, you know, FIFA soccer, and you win the whole pot, you win $50. We don't take a VIG or service fee. What we did is we bifurcated the revenue model and we created a play token. It's a Ethereum-based token, not full crypto yet, but we're entertaining that idea. And it's used as a utility for all the functions on our platform. So to create a match, to join a match, for micro wagering events. And so that's how play derives our predominant revenue. We have healthy margins there. And it also helps us when we do our kind of ecosystem strategic partnerships into larger communities. We can revenue share pretty easily there. But the second or third reason we did that is, as we think this market moves into more regulated, you want to have a clear bifurcation of who's touching that jackpot and for what reason, because if you're participating as a platform in that jackpot, you are viewed as the house or part of that wager. And that's when you've also moved into needing a gambling license. So today we make that very clear. There are some businesses out there that are kind of riding the gray area, but we want to stay out of that. As we move forward, there's a couple of kind of primary models we'll add to the function. We are rolling out probably into this year a B2B enterprise offering. So now our proprietary tech is becoming very interesting to some of the larger console players, bigger communities, and we want to integrate that into those. That'll be a mix of a revenue share or a SaaS licensing model with transaction fees. And then lastly, we think this market is right for obviously the fan betting with regulated partners. And in that model, those will probably be a mix of subscription and service fees. I should mention lastly, today, as we sell our tokenization, that's in a couple of flavors. Users can buy those as they need them on demand, or they can sign up for a PLAY subscription pass and they get 15 tokens a month for $12.99. And so we think there'll be proliferation of both.
Fantastic, great. Guys, I have to get to the next panel, but I really want to thank you for your contribution. It's fantastic. It's always great